that's an answer from Sunday. So I got that one. Is that what? Oh, and keep praying for Tammy's dad, Lonnie. I guess he's really, even, I forget her words now, but it's just a constant pain. It's not extreme pain, but it's just constant. And the test, his next doctor's appointment is Friday. So then they're going to find out what they're dealing with and make a plan. That'll be Friday morning.
Yes.
He said it feels like electric shock going through his belly right now.
There's appointments tomorrow.
Oh, yes. That seems so far away when you first mentioned it. Here we go.
And they were able to close Joyce's.
Yes.
My coworker George Hanson and his daughter Taylor fell and I had these new school day yesterday and broke her hip.
Oh.
Broke her hip.
Broke her hip, fell down some stairs.
Oh
Yes.
my.
And she was sore, and they took her to the ER today because the pain was pretty bad, and the X-ray found out she had a broken hip, so they took her straight to OSF in Peoria for surgery. She's in surgery now.
Wow. How old is she?
15.
15.
And she turns 15, I think, next month.
That's a rough thing to do that young. Should be predicting the weather for the rest of her life, potentially.
She already has struggled with scoliosis for most of her life, so
Oh, wow.
it's been a rough go at it. I get an update from my friend Paul's wife. She sent out an update to everyone on Sunday night, said that she wanted to share that things are more serious than they imagined. They're waiting for an appointment with the Cleveland Clinic on the 10th for a second opinion. They found a brain tumor that doesn't look good. It's definitely looking at chemo, radiation, and surgery. Since we're expecting that news, they said.
Wow. That would certainly explain a lot, though.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it seems to make sense, but
Would have been a lot nicer to just, blow an iron or something. Eat more meat and you're better.
yeah.
Anybody else? Don't really have any missionary updates.
Nothing yet this week. This Sunday I mentioned them on birds traveling, and then we just keep praying for the birds. But I haven't heard from anyone this week.
Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you again for who you are. I thank you that, again, that you are aware of these needs, you're aware of the circumstances, you're aware of the individuals involved, and certainly even the number of hairs on their head. And we thank you that you are that type of a God. We do pray for this, Gary. We thank you for the clear results of the test and positive results of the test. But I just pray that as they continue on and perhaps other tests and decisions in the road yet ahead, that you just continue to lead and direct. And we certainly do thank you for just for the results here this week. So we pray for Lonnie there in South Carolina, and perhaps even most importantly, the pain as far as the physical aspect, that you just enabled him to get the rest that he needs, and they'd be able to determine here a little later this week how they can help and with the pain and even with the road ahead. And so I do ask that you be with the family that's involved, and as they walk this journey with him as well. And I just pray that you would give the grace and the strength, and through this all, that you would even direct their focus even more solely upon you, and that they would grow stronger through this and closer to each other as well to you, to your honor and to your glory. We pray for Darren and his appointment here in a couple of days, and certainly just ask that you be able to direct in decisions, direct in the conversation. Certainly that you would just continue to give the progress that seems to have been going on ever slowly to this point. I just pray that you would certainly continue that on, and through this appointment, through the results and all that's involved, I just pray that your very presence would be felt, and that your very leading would be understood. Again, to your glory. We do ask that you be with George's daughter Taylor, and certainly the need that she has in this very hour in surgery. I pray that you would be with George and his wife as they're certainly there in dealing with all of this, and certainly just ask that you would bring healing, that in the days ahead, certainly in the pain that's going to follow, and the steps, figuratively and literally, that are to follow. I just pray that you would lead and direct, that you would remind the entire family of who you are and what you're doing. And I just ask that you be with her. Certainly a lot to deal with at a young age. I just pray that you give her that grace that can only come from you. I pray that she'd be able to sense you as well. And I certainly do ask that you be with Paul and certainly his family. And very difficult news to get here this week, and certainly the wait for the follow-up and all the details that are to follow. And it does seem to be an answer to certainly the circumstances that he's been facing and living through. But I just pray that you certainly give the confidence in you, the rest in you as a result of these results. And I just pray that you would make them stronger, again, as individuals, and certainly that you would go ahead and before, as we know that you will, through this very journey that lies ahead. And perhaps even in the details of a house being sold and all of that. I just pray that, especially at this time, that you just iron all that out, smooth the path that surrounds them in all of these incidentals while they face a rather large situation in their life and their home. And I just pray that you be honored, as only you should be honored. And we thank you for what you'll do. Certainly we pray again for the Bergs, and certainly their work there in Australia, but as well their work now here in the States, and being here with Don's mom. I pray that you would give her the rest, the time alert in visiting, and then as well you be with the family as they care for her, and certainly sit alongside of her in whatever remaining days you allow her. Certainly do pray for the Mumfords as well as they head back to France, and certainly those details and certainly the reality of to an extent of returning back to their home, but yet having to return back to the States. I just pray that you give them the grace and certainly encouragement to the church there as they continue looking for a pastor. I pray that in this visit, however long or short, that you would be an encouragement to both the Mumfords and the church. And just that you continue to lead both in the direction that you have for them. And we thank you for what you'll do. And again, for all the requests still on our hearts and our minds that we haven't shared or that we have, I pray that you continue to work, continue to lead. Just allow us to continue to be patient as we wait on you and giving you the glory for it. In Jesus' name, amen. As far as some quick announcement, Sunday, Lord willing, we have another meal. Looks like hamburgers. They're on the grill, and as I already mentioned, hopefully some bacon and some Old Joe's barbecue sauce, or whatever else you like to put on it. And then we have the afternoon service with the teens, and some more memory verses and another lesson there in the books. And so encourage all of us to be prepared for that. What else do we have? Couple weeks, well, probably not next week, potentially the next. The 18th, will that be right? See? 18th. Probably when we'll go to Mr. Cole. So we'll be here one more week, and then we'll go visit him again. And then the following we'll be gone. So we'll probably end up possibly canceling that week. We'll see how that all plays out as we get closer. And our anniversary service is coming up here very shortly. So that'll be fun to have the Wright family, at least a portion of it, here with us, and looking forward to a time of music and challenge as well. Other than that, as far as our schedule, nursing home is coming up here very shortly, end of the month. And again, if anybody's interested in being a part of that. Updates from, I guess, the last time we met on a Wednesday night. We were gone last week. It seems a lot longer ago than just a week ago, which went away. But the last Wednesday we were here, we discussed some real business decisions, and I see the kitchen is done. Kitchen is not completely done. We want to still swap out the outlets, which we have. I know Mary got at least some of them, so we got to finish those up, and then potentially fix Matt and my temporary repair. The muffler strap, which may be needed on Caitlin's band at this point. So we have that to finish, but I don't foresee much expense there. Well, if we had to buy a couple more outlets, that may be. I think we have enough outlets to do the one by the sink or by the microwave. And this guy that was here said that we should really have them in all the outlets in the kitchen, which doesn't necessarily make all that much sense because it's not near the water, but it is what it is. So we'll get that done. The electric box is done on the ramp, and the lights are working. And we have a timer in the garage, which obviously we're going to have to adjust as the seasons come and go. Now I think it's 7 to 7, if I recall. Comes on at 7, goes off at 7, something like that. So that is done, and the foundation has been repaired. Someday after the service, we went home, changed, came right back up, and started scraping. Is that still a mortar joint with blocks? I think mortar joint is more for like bricks, but if it is a mortar joint, we'll call it that. The joint in between the concrete blocks, started scraping away at those because several of them were bad here on the landing, and then a lot of it was bad in that closet downstairs. And it was amazing, surprising how much of it was bad, how much of it, just a little pressure, just fell out. And then outside as well, there was a gap before, and so the gap that was like this turned into about like this. And so it certainly was in need. So Sunday we got all that scraped out, cleaned up, and hydraulic cement put in, and then it dried overnight. And Monday morning we pressure washed, and then we had 2 coats of the waterproofing paint around it. And what we have to do now is put the regular paint, which will be tinted, about that color. And if the weather holds, we may get that done this weekend. Let's see.
Looks really nice.
Looks very bright. You don't need sunglasses walking up to the building now. But we got 2 coats, and right now we are at, what was it, $1,108. I had figured out the cost to do the dry lock from Lowe's, the dry lock waterproof, which is like sludge. And so it would take 10 gallons to do this amount, just the foundation. And so without even thinking, we went to Menards and bought this waterproof, which I'm glad was not like sludge because it went on much quicker then. I got 10 gallons because that was, we need 10 gallons. Well, we only needed 5 gallons. So we have 5 gallons return, which is about $130. So we're back under $1,000. But we want to get some good exterior paint like we did with the siding as well. Because I don't like painting that much that I want to do this again right away. And so in my opinion, it's worth the money to get a little nicer paint so it lasts a little longer. And so that'll probably take us back over to just over $1,000, but so far we're doing well as far as our budget and the expenses involved. We wound up starting to caulk. I had this big tube, what is that, 22 ounces or whatever it was, the long tube of that self-leveling concrete caulk to put alongside in between the building and the sidewalk. And that was after we put 40 feet of baccarat in there, shoved it down in there. 40 feet of it was like this, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just shoved down in there. And I assumed that this big tube, so you gotta have that big, heavy, that long caulk gun, would be plenty. And we got just the half of it, and it just because self-oiling just started to sink, and so that took a lot more than we anticipated, and we're just going to wait to finish that until it's painted. So it looks pretty. And but that's
one coat of paint inside, but we'll put a
Yes.
second coat on.
yes. So the inside is just one coat of the waterproof. We are deciding we may just, you can, what we have been told at both Lowe's and Menards is that the waterproofing paint is not paint, but especially indoors as a waterproofer, you can use it as a paint as long as you like white. Outside, they strongly recommended, both places recommended that you put some sort of exterior paint over it. What did the guy at Lowe's say? He says, waterproofing paint will keep the water out, but it won't hold up to the weather.
Okay.
Okay, that makes sense to you. Makes no sense to me. Okay, but anyway, so they want us to put, or they highly recommend that we put some exterior paint, because exterior paint will have whatever scientific capabilities to withstand the weather, whereas the waterproofing paint will keep the water from seeping through the block. And so we'll get that done as well. Was that something I was going to go with
So
that?
you were saying, but interior, we could just use the.
Yes, so
second
interior, we're
finish
thinking
with
we're going to
white.
put a second coat on the block wall, like from the bathroom. Got to share a story on that one. And the closet downstairs. And we may just leave it. Well, I guess we'll ask for opinions there.
Sure.
Obviously, the girls' bathroom is a different color. That wall is white already.
It was white and
And
the
the
closet.
closet was kind of a cream, was it? Or was it
No,
white?
it was white.
That's
So
right,
those
because
two
we only
items-
painted the other part.
White over white.
So certainly the closet, I see no reason for paint. I guess, and the other part was already white, so I don't necessarily see that we need paint. The girls' bathroom will really be the deciding factor, I guess, if we
We'll
want
wait
to.
till I get the second coat on, because
Paint it.
right now it doesn't look good, but
Yes.
just wait.
Josiah and I were up scraping on the inside on Sunday afternoon. And Jen was here with us, and she was busy doing, I don't remember where she was. Anyway, Josiah goes into the bath. He was a great help. He really did a lot, surprisingly. And he loves destroying things, so he did well on that part. He goes into the girls' bathroom, closes the door, because obviously he's behind the door, and he's scraping away, and then he comes out and I said, I was kind of surprised, wow, you're done already. He says, Dad, I got behind the door, but the rest was behind the toilet. I think we need to have Mom do it. It'll just be easier that way. Well said, kid, but let's not tell Mom that.
You two both agree.
Sounded like a great plan. Let's have Mom do it. It'll be easier that way. So Mom did it, and it was really easy for us, wasn't it, Josiah? No problems. We are very quickly. That's all we need to go over, right? Oh no, there's one more thing. We also talked about the Brotherhood and insurance and the requirements for raising our limit for the sexual acts, as they call it, coverage. There are some wording things that we have to add to our policy that we already have in place, but ironically just changed in, what was that, July. And so just a few word changes that they want us to have specified in there, just in regards to their 2 adult rule or the rule of 3, actually having that in the policy. And then specifying the reality of criminal background checks, but I think is already in there, I have to verify. And then obviously the other requirements is that we have background checks for anybody, what does it say here, where do we, all volunteers that could have access to children, youth, or vulnerable adults. And one place that I had found was like $25 a person to do a background check. And the challenge in that regard is then how do you define all volunteers that could have access? Because any of us could have access. And while at the same point, if someone's not interested in being a part of a Sunday school, VBS, whatever, it's unfortunately the church has to pay for that. But anyway, there is one of the places of Brotherhood, which we can just maybe not discuss tonight because I want to get to this lesson, but they recommend a couple of different places, and they don't want to make it so that we have to use any of these. In fact, when he was here, he said you could use any background check you want. One of their places that they do recommend is Protect My Ministry, which I've heard. I don't know if I've heard it on the radio being advertised or if it was in the front line or something. I know I've heard Protect My Ministry before in that regard. Well, anyway, they have 4 bundles of programs. The most expensive one is $1,000 a year. But that's for obviously very large churches because it'll give you job or quote / volunteer employment boards. So if you have a church of several thousand and you want to get the name out that the nursery could use 5 more people, you could use, obviously that does not apply to us because if the nursery needs 5 more people, I will say, hey, the nursery needs 5 more people, and you all will hear that. The cheapest one, which looks like everything that we would need, does the screening and the tracking, and if I'm getting everything, it's one of those websites that you have to actually talk to them first before they give you any official confirmation. But bundle 1 says $149 a year, and there's no limit of how many people. And from what I saw online, it's basically you create your list. You can't put anybody on that list that hasn't already signed paperwork saying you're willing to be on that list. And then it runs with everybody. And it's basically kind of like an Outlook contact list almost. And you put everybody in your contact list, and on the year anniversary of when they're put on there, it'll check it again. And it does all the work. And there's no files or no paperwork. There's nothing to keep on site. I was even mentioning at lunch today or sometime, we have to figure out some way to, if we start doing this, where we can keep these records, that they're very secure, because we don't want anybody accessing this. And the safe that we have downstairs really needs to get replaced, because it is seldom you get into it. It's one of those that you do a lot of praying, you do a lot of beating on it. What was that?
Anybody could walk.
And then, anybody technically could, if they were very strong. He weighs a ton. But anyway, I was just thinking, we got to come up with some way, because obviously they need to do no good if we can't open up the safe to put them in there. What's in the safe is permanently in it. We may never get it out. But adding stuff to the safe now may not be an option. Well, anyway, this is all cloud-based and secure in whatever fashion, and so it would always be there. We don't have to have anything printed off, and it does all the work for us. If anything comes back as a negative, they do a free, which apparently most places don't, but they will do a free verification of everything. And so they will literally contact the courthouse and find out, is this person who is showing an arrest really the person that is on our list with this birth date, with this social security number? Is this really a match? And so they will verify all that before they even present it to the church, which is pretty impressive. But it's $149 a year, and then it checks as many people as you want. But obviously, you have to sign the paperwork, but all of us could be on that list, and they run them all, and all will be well, and 1 year later, it does it again, and we go from there. But anyway, that's what I found so far, and still looking. I'm assuming at some point, because I fill out all their contact information for me to be contacted, and we'll see how that works out. $25 a person, that still winds up being $6, which may have been the amount that we would have been checking anyway. But I like the fact that we don't ever have to have do we have them checked or we don't have them checked? Will they be a part of this? Will they not be a part of this? Ideally, we just encourage, if you're interested, fill out the paperwork, put you on the list, it gets checked automatically, and we're good to go. We only get alerted if there's anything that causes an issue, and they've verified with whatever courthouse is involved, and it sounded pretty intriguing.
Between the night out where we're dealing with kids in the parade, where you're dealing with kids, almost everybody in the church is involved. So.
Yes. The church can't force anybody
Right.
to do that, but
Right.
yeah, pretty much all of us. And especially when it says could have. Those are kind of funny words, because any church of any size, anybody could have interaction with children. And so that's kind of a rough. It's great. Great for a program like this, where you could literally put 3,000 people on this list, and for $149, they will check them all. But otherwise, it's pretty rough wording. Could have. Any other thoughts, comments? Volunteers to paint? Well, I didn't say that, did I? We're going over some pitfalls. Pitfall number 1, good times, and the last fall on pleasant places. The instruments, or pitfall number 2, mainly ourselves as instruments, or ourselves relying on others who are being used as instruments in God's hand. That reminds me, certainly in West Bend when I was an assistant pastor, we had this, but even here where we lived in the parsonage, people could knock on our door. They knew that the pastor was there. There are definitely a lot of places in probably every town that rely on the church to meet all their needs, even though they don't rely on the church for any other thing. They want the church, quote unquote, to buy their groceries, whatever it is. And relying on the instrument instead of putting their trust in God. Small things, certainly another aspect where it becomes difficult to trust God, or pitfall of trust. Our emotions, how I am responding, my responses, my side focus, are they only for my benefit? Our solutions, view from the outside. Jeremiah, they have forsaken me. Tried their own solutions. Number 6, our ambition, the lusts of the flesh, lusts of the eyes, the pride of life, all there from Genesis. And certainly what a perfect example, the first example of failing to trust God and how we fall in that same path. Tonight, very quickly, we want to look at our knowledge, or more specifically, in knowing our risks, knowing the results, knowing, knowing here's what's going on, here's what I expect is going to happen. And sometimes that knowledge that we have will lead us to a lack of, or a pitfall, not a lack of, but have a pitfall of trust, because our minds begin to just conclude, this is what's going to happen. This is the end result. This is how this is going to happen. If children are often used as an example of faith, and many times the example that is given is a child jumping into the arms of a father. And I could guarantee you that if at even the age of, say, 3, I put Josiah up on this table and I sat back and I said, Josiah, jump. I could guarantee you that he would have, without question. In fact, I could have caught him and put him right back up on the table, and I would have said, okay, let's do it again, and he'd do it again. And probably by after the second time, he'd be saying, again, this is what he often said, again. And it would have become a game, and he would have just loved to be put up on the table and jump into my arms, put back on the table, jump in my arms. Now, as he gets older and taller, I'm guessing if I put him up there, if I could put him up there now, he would be perhaps a little more hesitant, because obviously he'd be higher than I am as he's jumping. And yet I still suspect that he would certainly jump into my arms. But could you imagine as he continues to get older, like if I had Matthew stand up there and I told him to jump? Matt would just laugh and say, no. Because Matt would know the likelihood probably of Dad still being able to catch him without knocking us both out is probably pretty slim. Although I think I still could have taught him, because he's like this big around. But anyway. Now, if Josiah, even as a young child, even as a 5-year-old, as he's now 8, apparently so much older than 5, but as a 3, 5, even an 8-year-old, if I stood up there after we had gone through this whole routine over and over again and heard him say again and again and again, if I put him up there one more time and I said, all right, Josiah, before you jump, I just need to let you know some of the details here. The thing is, if you jump and I'm not ready for you and I land on top of you, I could hurt you severely, and probably myself as well. And the other thing is, if you jump and I fumble you and you hit your head on that pew right there, it actually could kill you, or paralyze you, or if I just completely miss you, obviously, and you fall from here down to there right on your face, obviously that's going to hurt, and you may break some bones, you may not, but it's going to hurt. All right, now, Josiah, now jump. The truth is probably even as a 3 or 5-year-old, and the perfect example of trusting a father, now that he knows all those details, I suspect he's going to be a little less trusting even as a youngster, if I explained all those details out to him, he'd be going, well, what I know Josiah would be doing is he'd still jump, but he'd say to me, come closer, come closer. And then he wanted me to put my arms up. And then pretty much he would jump and his hands are already in my hands. And then he'd have no problem jumping. But I'd have to come to his parameters to do it. Now, I'm not saying that truly trusting God is all about being completely ignorant. That's really not the point I'm trying to make, but I am making the reverse side of the coin, if I could say one side of the coin but not the other. The problem or the pitfall sometimes to our trusting God is when we think we know too much. Just like that child has no problem jumping into a father's arms, but you also know the child has not thought through the process of what if dad doesn't catch me. They just have faith that dad will. But as they get older, or as they are being explained the very reality that this is what's going to happen if he doesn't, the trust will soon quickly disappear. And I think the same thing happens in our trusting of our God, with the difference being we think we know the results. And it causes us to lack in our trust to a God who already does know the results. And it can become devastating in our own walk, in our own life, and as well be a pitfall. This next year, 2020, obviously it's a nice round number for a year. Ironically, it's an interesting number for us as a couple. We'll have been married for 25 years, which is kind of a round number of sorts. I will have been in full-time ministry for 20 years. We'll also have been on a fire, EMS, police, I guess all of the above, for 25 years. I will have been at Leasers for 10 years. Well, I actually started more than 10 years ago, but I had a little time frame there in the middle where I wasn't at Leasers. And what else is going to be happening? And we'll have our 10th year in our house already, which is crazy, next year. Which will then, with 10 years as a licensed insurance agent, I will have my 5th year as a city council member. So there's a lot of somewhat bigger things going on next year. But again, in the reality, just focusing on the insurance thing, Jason, most of many of you know him, has often accused me of being the party pooper, because whenever the fire department or the police department or the city decides they want to do something, they look to me and say, so what are your thoughts on it? And I'll tell them how the insurance is going to come into play. Well, you don't probably want to do that, because if someone gets hurt, this person and this entity and this is going to be all held liable, and so we probably, and so Jason has been heard a time or two saying, don't ask Art, because he'll just tell you insurance says no. Probably something that 10 years ago I would have never said, to an extent. I think I've always loved the fine print of everything, and I always enjoyed even reading an insurance policy, oddly enough, not because I enjoyed insurance, just that aspect, all the legalities of it. But the truth is, the more that we know sometimes, the less that we trust. And Judges chapter 6 is a familiar event, and I almost hesitate to go there, because I would assume that we know. We may not know when I say Judges 6 what actually is in Judges chapter 6, but when I start referencing it, you probably will know. Judges chapter 6. 3 points here: what we know, what we expect, and what God does. Here tonight, verse 1 of chapter 6. And the children of Israel, again, that word's not in there, but I'm saying it, again, did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. The hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them the dens which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds. In other words, the children of Israel are going through such oppression that they are actually hiding in caves. Things are not going well for them. If we could say, as far as our circumstances, things are not going well for them. Now, the reasoning is, verse 1, they did evil in the sight of the Lord, and there's consequences to that. Verse 3, and so it was when Israel had sown that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites and the children of the east, even they came up against them, and they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth till thou come unto Gaza, left no a sustenance for Israel, neither sheep nor ox nor ass. So they came up with their cattle and their tents. They came up as grasshoppers for multitude, for both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it. Let's give a kind of an idea of where the children of Israel are at this point. They are enduring the what do you call that? The oppression of the Midianites to the point that they have made their homes in caves in hiding, and perhaps under the security of night, perhaps even they come out to plant their fields for their own survival. And they have cultivated those fields, they have watered those fields, they have cared for those fields, and it has come to harvest time. And before they have a time to come out of their caves to get their food in the fields, the Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the others that surround them have come in like grasshoppers and literally taken their food. And so what they have been preparing for, what they have been living for, what they have been hoping for is now gone. In fact, it says not only are their harvests gone, but their animals and their beasts of labor are gone as well. And the idea is that this happened every year. Could you imagine living in such oppressive areas where you're hiding for your life in caves in the mountains, and what fields you're able to cultivate? You know, for instance, we plant the garden out here. Before Caitlin is able to get the first cherry tomato, somebody, maybe the neighbors, come and they ransack and they take everything. Used to be the rabbits. Come and they ransack everything, and there's nothing left. Imagine that you did that for the first year, and then the second year, and the third year, and the fourth year, and that continues on year after year. And Israel, verse 6, was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel, now I'm going to add this word, finally, but I could also use this word, again, cried unto the Lord. It came to pass when the children of Israel cried unto the Lord because of the Midianites, that the Lord sent a prophet unto the children of Israel, which said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage. Similar to what you are now, I did this once. A great reminder in our regards to our trust. How often we forget what God has already done because our mind is consumed with what we think is about to happen again. And I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all that oppressed you, and gave you out from before you, and gave you their land. And I said unto you, I am the Lord your God. Fear not the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. There came an angel of the Lord and sat under an oak which was in Ophrah, and that pertains unto Joash, from wherever that city of A goes, and his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. Now here we have, again, living in caves. They're under the same oppression. They are trying to have wheat, and they're hiding that wheat so it doesn't get destroyed from the quote-unquote grasshoppers, which aren't actually grasshoppers, they're actually men. The angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. Now, that's an important phrase, thou mighty man of valor. Now, we know about Gideon. We know what would happen, and we know that indeed he is a mighty man of valor. But you know, at this very moment, what is Gideon doing? He's working for his dad, living in a cave, working a hidden field of wheat, hoping to survive. Because those around them are not being as fortunate. Things couldn't be any more less desirable, but as well, when you think of a man of valor, a man of strength, a man of integrity, a man that has authority, that's not what he's living right now. This is a man who's scared. He's working with his dad in hiding, in refuge, because of oppression. And Gideon said unto him, O my Lord, if the Lord be with us, honest question, why then is all this befallen us? And where be all his miracles which our fathers told us of, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. I realize I haven't put anything up here yet. This is the first one I said, what we know. Sometimes when we see too much, it impacts our trust. And when we live, I can even put that word up there, when we live too much, as they are facing there with the Midianites, it becomes a pitfall for our trust. Because in their minds, I'm certain they're thinking, this is not recorded, but I'm certain year after year after year if this is happening. How many years did it say the Midianites? 7 years. So for 7 years this has happened. Can you imagine on that 7th year, not feeling very man of valor-ish. We're not feeling very mighty. We're feeling kind of cowardly. And here we go again. We're going to plant this field and we're now hiding this field. We're hoping that nobody knows about our field because we need something to eat. And if somebody knows about this field, well, is going to give us something to eat, they're just going to come and take it from us. And so here we are. What we know sometimes becomes a pitfall to us, our knowledge, our knowing of our risk. And that becomes our pitfall. But secondly, as we jump ahead, because I did already, what we expect. And in these verses, it's an interesting, we expect God as they cry out unto the Lord again. We expect God to fix things our way. They weren't crying out unto God until things went bad. They weren't crying out unto God until they came to the realization that, this isn't going the way we want. And so let's call unto God and see what happens for our life. When Bob and I were in college and there was a family, in fact, we talked about her, Agers. I don't remember when the last time was that we talked about them, but anyway, there was a family in Madison, Wisconsin that kind of adopted Bob and I, and on the weekends they would house us, and as well, at least the summer that we stayed there for the whole summer and doing an internship, they housed us. And then pretty much any other time that we needed to stay at work, if we had to work over a holiday from school, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, whatever it was, if we had to work, both of us had on-campus and off-campus jobs. They would have us live with them, and it would be a shorter distance. We didn't have to stay on campus all by ourselves, but we'd stay in their house. But anyway, as my wife can attest, before she was my wife, and she'd come and visit us in that house, which they had a beautiful, rather large house, and just two of them. Later it became the two of them and Grandma. And then Bob and I in the basement. And so there'd be times that Jen would come over and visit, or while we were still in school, sometimes we were both over there on Sundays. And watching a movie with Mrs. Ager was hilarious. And what is hilarious about watching movies with Mrs. Ager is we always seem to watch like those Hallmark type movies. Where if you've watched one Hallmark movie, you've watched all of the Hallmark movies.
Not a classic.
Not a classic. No, they're not classics. They're just the same storyline, different people, different dog, different weather. But it's the same storyline over and over and over again. There's going to be two people that don't like each other, that are somehow going to be put in a place where they don't want to be, and suddenly they're going to decide that they like each other, and then there's going to be a fight about something. It could be the color of their shoes, for all I care. There's going to be a fight, and then here comes the end of the movie, and before you know it, they're kissing and it's snowing, or raining, or there's something that's going on. And that's every Hallmark movie they've ever made. That's the storyline. I'll give you that. But Mrs. Ager loved to watch those kinds of movies, and we would sit there thinking, you know what's going to happen. I mean, the credits haven't even stopped rolling. I already know what's going to happen. Well, watch the movie. This is not the case. Watch the movie with Mrs. Ager. She's talking out loud throughout the whole movie, predicting what's going to happen. And the rest of us are sitting there like, we know. Why are we watching this? You know, so they introduce a female and they introduce a male. And if you've watched a Hallmark movie, you know what's going to happen. She'll announce like boldly, oh, they're going to fall in love. Yeah. And then as soon as there's even the hint that, oh, that's going to be a problem, they're going to split. We know Mrs. Ager. And then the movie would end, the credits are rolling, and she'd stand up, and this is what she'd say every time. She'd stand up, and whether it's to go to bed or to go get a snack, I could write these things.
Every time.
Every time. I could just write these things. We thought to ourselves, everybody can! It's the same movie. I think we watched this last Sunday. It was just a different name. Everybody could write this, Mrs. Ager, but she was so confident. She was giving us all the play-by-plays. 30 seconds before it happened through the whole movie, and stands up. I could just write these things. Oh, we love you too, Mrs. Ager. But you know, the reality is at times is that we expect God to fix things our way because we could write our life. We could write our story. We could write the circumstances. We know what's going to happen because we think we know what's going to happen. And we expect God to work in our way. And then we expect God's presence to bless us. Look what Gideon has just said as I got to this point. Verse 13, oh my Lord. He's just been Can you imagine? The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. I don't think that there would be anything more precious to any person to hear than those words. The Lord is with thee, thou man of valor. If any of us heard those words, could you imagine what would go through your mind? But in all honesty, this is what goes through Gideon's mind. Oh my Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is this befallen upon us? Why are we facing the circumstance? We expect God's presence then, in essence, to bless us. If God is here, if God truly is here, then we shouldn't be going through this. And a lot of times when people face difficulties in life, and in their mind they already know what is going to play out. They are Mrs. Ager for their own life. And they could write that story ahead of time. We assume then at times, well, we may not say this, but the fact that things are not working well is evidence that God is not here. And it's often said that people will ask, where are you, God? If things go wrong, the question that is asked, where are you, God? Because like Gideon, it's assumed that if God is here, then there is blessing. When there is a lack of blessing, as they are living in real time, then it's because God is not here. So why are you saying God is with me? Because he's not, is in essence what he's saying. God can't be with me because I'm facing these circumstances. And if I'm facing these circumstances, my head says, then God is not with us. Continues on. And where be all his miracles, which our father told us of, saying, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? This is exactly almost word for word of what the prophet has just told them. Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord hath forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. We expect the answer to be mighty as well. We expect God to do something in such a way that it's going to be big. Hey, the Lord hath delivered us, forsaken us, delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. That's not what God does. That's not something big. And the Lord looked upon him and said, go in this thy might, and thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent thee? And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. Hey, there's nothing special about me. And there's nothing special about my heritage. There's nothing special about my family. We are very poor. We're hiding in a cave, trying to hide what little we can manage in our quote-unquote field, just to survive. The Lord said unto him, surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. Well, here's what's amazing about what we know and what we expect is the problem is they go one from the other. What we know leads us to what we expect. My knowledge says, here's the circumstance. Here's the Mrs. Ager rest of the story. 30 seconds before it happens, and my mind says this is what's going to happen. And the very reality is I want God to fix things my way. I want him to give me that fairy tale ending. I want that circumstance to be resolved by the end of the movie, by the end of that hour and a half time frame. And the very reality of God's presence means he's going to bless me. The very reality of God being with me means that there's going to be something big and mighty. And it's not happening, so where are you, God? And so it's our knowledge or our assumptions, it's our conclusions that get in the way of blessing our God. But then there is what God does. And I don't know how the time to go through all of this, but you know the stories, and sometimes I think we forget that these happen back to back. Gideon says, if I have found grace in thy sight, verse 17, then show me a sign that thou talkest with me. Depart not hence, I pray thee, until I come unto thee, and bring forth my present, and it shall be before thee. And he said, I will tarry until thou comest. And Gideon went and made ready a kid, and 11 cakes of an ephah of flour, and flesh he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought it out unto him under the oak, and presented it. And the angel of God said unto him, take the flesh and the 11 cakes, and lay them upon the rock, and pour out the broth, and he did so. Then the angel of the Lord put forth the end of the staff that was in his hand, and touched the flesh and the 11 cakes, and there arose a fire out of the rock, and consumed the flesh and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight. Now, can you imagine? What is Gideon asking? Prove to me that you truly are who you say you are. Could there be any better sign than, how about you lay all this stuff out and watch what happens? And he just touches it with the end of his staff, and fire comes out of the rock and consumes it. Fire department last night had a controlled burn, and it was a pile that's been sitting there forever, and so it just in there. And the rain didn't help, and so it was not fun to keep it going. And so there was a lot of diesel fuel that was being thrown under that fire, and just to keep it hot enough to keep burning, because it's just all mulching. If you put stuff in a pile and it sits too long, it just turns into mulch, and then like dirt, and dirt doesn't burn. And so they were adding diesel fuel to help dirt burn, basically. And it was kind of ironic because everything looks like it's been sitting there. Everything is dead. Everything's brown. There's just dried leaves from years and years of raking and whatnot. And it should have gone, but it didn't. Throwing more diesel on it, and a little more diesel on it, and a little more diesel on it. But can you imagine? Here is all this fresh meat, literally fresh meat, raw meat being put on the ground, and then fire comes out of the ground, comes out of the rock, and consumes this. It would seem like an obvious reason to say, yeah, that was God. That was God. When Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord, Gideon said, Alas, O Lord God, for because I have seen an angel of the Lord face to face. And the Lord said unto him, Peace be unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die. Then Gideon built an altar there. Verse 24, let me jump down here a few verses. Where do I want to go? In the same circumstance, and I'm not finding it. It's a problem when I prepare one Bible and you know where it is in the column, and then you come to this other one, the columns aren't the same. Here we go. Verse 36. If there couldn't be a better sign that God is with him, that God has sent him, that God has already told him, you're a man of valor, you're going to do great things, you're going to destroy the Midianites, you're going to bring them freedom, this is going to be good, I'm going to go with you. Where do we find Gideon then, by the time we get to verse 36? If I could just ask one more thing, God, besides the whole fire coming up out of the rocks and all the other things that you've done so far and the conversation that we've had, if this is really you, and if you are really sending me, behold, I will put a fleece of wool on the floor, and if the dew be on the fleece only, and if it be dry upon all the earth besides, then I shall know that thou wilt save Israel by my hand, as thou hast said. What happens the next morning? It's exactly that case. What happens the next day? If I could ask just one more thing, just so that I know for sure that it is you, and that it is you that is going to send, how often in our knowledge, he's already admitted, who am I to do this? Kind of like Moses. Who am I to do this? I am of a nobody, from a nobody family that nobody cares about. I can't do this. And God says, I'm going to go with you. I'll do this for you. I'll show you that I'm going to do this. Fire comes out of a rock. Gideon's like, oh, now I know. And even by the response of the Lord, it's almost as if Gideon expects to be killed. Yeah, I'm not going to kill you. Hold on. Don't freak out. I'm not going to kill you. You're all right. I'm just proving to you who I am. And we continue on this whole conversation and the actions involved in the middle part of this chapter. And then Gideon goes back to the very question of, so if this is you, and if it is you sending me, can you do this miracle that seems completely like it never could happen? How could that be wet but everything else is dry? He wakes up the next morning and that's exactly as he said. Okay, so now just to prove that, one step farther, can we do it so the opposite? So everything else is wet, now this is dry. And so let's do it this way. So then again that I know who you are. And verse 40 says that God did so that very night. For it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. I think I had those backwards before. Well, then we go into chapter 7. And you know what happens in the very next chapter as Gideon goes out to lead in the victory of the nation of Israel against the Midianites? What does God do to Gideon? After he has taken the time 3 times to prove who he is and that he will do this, and I am with you. What does God do to poor Gideon? Yeah, he start out with 30,000 men. Hey, gather some men. All right, I got 30,000 men. I can imagine in Gideon's mind, he's thinking, if this is all it meant that it was needed, we would have done this a long time ago. I don't think even this is enough. That's not said there, but we can almost interpret it that way. If those 30,000 men were all that was needed to gain the victory, they could have done that 7 years ago. Gideon is assuming then with these 30,000 men, the difference is now he's gotten 3 proofs that this is God and God is sending him, and so this is going to work. All right, I'll take your 30,000 men and let's go down and what was the first test they had? I think lapping was the last one. Oh, ask who wants to go home. Now, they've been under oppression for 7 years, which means they're not fat and well-rested. They're starving and hungry and they're weak. They're wore out. Who wants to go home? I do. The next guy says, me too. The next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the army dramatically shrinks. Anybody see the verse where it says how many they brought down to?
10,000.
10,000. So what does it start with? 32,000 shrinks down to 10,000 men. Verses 4 and 6 then, the Lord says unto Gideon, the people are yet too many, they're yet too many. Bring them down to the water, and I'll try them for thee there, and it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee. And we know the test was then drinking out of their hand, or as opposed to putting their face in the water to get some water. Anybody remember what the number winds up being then? From 32,000, they dropped down to 10,000. Just simply 22,000 men said, I just want to go home. I don't want to do this. Now we're down to 10,000 men. Now we have this test with the water, and what do they wind up with? 300 men. What does God do at times when we have a pitfall and learn to trust Him? Because our knowledge says this can't happen. This isn't going to work. I know how this is going to work out. I am Mrs. Egger, and I could write the story. Well, you know, the very reality is what God does at times to show us an even clearer way that He is more powerful than we could ever imagine. Now, stepping in, I know, again, we know this, but stepping into Gideon's shoes, who, from the very beginning, what words can we use to describe him? God said man of valor, but what literally can we use to describe him? Fearful, yes. Extremely cautious, kind of goes along with fearful. He's doubting. I don't know if this is you, God. How am I supposed to trust you in this? I don't know if it's really you. There's a lot of words that we can be using to describe Gideon. And he's proven that he's a slow learner. He's not moving beyond that point. And so we take a guy who's already questioning, is this God? Who's already questioning if he can do this. He's already questioning why he's going to do this. He's already questioning, should anybody be doing this? And then God says, I want you to get an army together, 32,000 men. Then I want to ask, who wants to go home? Can you imagine as his mouth drops as, what do we say? We went from 32 down to 10. So 22,000 men go home. I can't imagine being Gideon in that very moment saying, no, you guys, you can't do this. No, I can't do this without you. You come back here. And then hearing these words from God, there's still too many of them. We know this event, but we got to move it from the historical narrative to the very reality of our feet, to the very reality of our lives. Remind ourselves that there are times when what we know leads us to what we expect, how we write our story, and we're oblivious to what God does. And many times when God is responding to our lack of trust, to our pitfall of trust, and He's responding sometimes in the exact same ways so that we will be reminded of who He is, it causes us to even doubt Him even more. Or even come to what we know and what we expect, and He keeps going into that cycle. But we have to be reminded of what God does. And with 300 men, Gideon is left to go take on the mighty army of the Midianites. Remember, the very ones that conquered them. Now I'm going to take you with 300 men, and let's go do it. And what is also amazing about what our God is I'm keeping these points, that God commands that we take a stand. God commands that we depend on Him. Gideon, you got to go do this. You need to take a stand. You need to be bold. You need to follow. You need to trust. He demands that you depend on Him. There's still too many men. You're going to depend on yourself, not on me. Do you imagine as God says that, you're going to depend on yourself, not on me? Gideon's probably saying, me? No. I'm scared to death. My feet are shaking. I am sweating profusely, and it's the middle of winter. This is not me. I can't do this. God commands that we depend on Him, but God also understands our needs. You recall, and again, I won't go to the verses here, but you recall as Gideon is sent out to leave He says one more time to God, how can I know this is you? Can you imagine after all of this again saying, how can I know, God, that I can trust you? But how often we do the exact same thing, especially as things seem to be going from bad to worse. How can I know that this is you? And it's amazing how God then in the moment, you recall this event. I'll give you the narrative here. God sends Gideon and a few men over to basically spy on the Midianites, and he overhears a conversation that says, have you heard about this man named Gideon and how God is with him? And it's that conversation that Gideon says, I know this is God. And he does what God had called him to do. And the entire chapter ago, before Gideon started asking all these, well, how do I know? How do I know? How can I trust? You got to prove so that I can trust. Now Gideon is saying, let's go to war. Let's go do this. And we know the victory. We know that Gideon did prove to be quite the man of valor. But he didn't start out as a man of valor. God created him into a man of valor. God molded him into a man of valor. Because he was a man of great fears, a man of great doubt. He was a man that had great questions. A man that continually said, I don't know. Because what I do know is I can't do this. What I do know is we now can't do this. What I do know even more is that if we couldn't do this, then I certainly know that we now can't do this. But what God does is he understands our needs. He gives that moment of encouragement for poor Gideon and sends him into battle. And what a reminder for us at times when we have that pitfall of trust. We live I don't know if anybody actually really ever lives a Hallmark movies life. But we live whatever our movie is. It may be more of a horror movie. I don't know what it would be. But whatever the movie is that we live out, at times we can begin to write our own story. And we assume what's going to happen. And we expect to know what's going to happen. And we expect God to do what we hope for him to do. All the while never really trusting on him to do what he is going to do. What a reminder what God does. What God does for us, probably daily, weekly, monthly. What God does for Gideon back then. God understands our needs. So he sends us into the battle. And then maybe learn to trust him. Even when things go from here, which is already a bad starting point, and then keep getting that farther and farther and farther until we learn to truly trust him. And we watch God do what he planned to do the whole time. You imagine if Gideon would have said when the angel of the Lord came unto him and said, "Oh, mighty man of valor, the Lord be with you. You will be able to conquer the Midianites." What would have happened if Gideon would have said, "I can't, but I know with you we can, so let's go"? Well, we would have missed 2 chapters of narrative that are the exact same things that we live out as well. And what a reminder. Trusting God. And our pitfall, our knowledge of our assumptions of what we think is going to happen. Any questions, comments? Taking roll questions or comments? That's great. Lord, we thank you again for your word. We thank you for certainly the well-known example of Gideon, but I pray that, again, that it wouldn't just be a historical narrative, something that happened in the past, a cool story, a great story, but I pray that we be reminded of it in our own lives, in our own shoes, and be able to see how often we actually live the same questions in life. When we begin to doubt you, when we begin to lack trust in you, when we begin to question you, when you've told us to do something and we immediately respond that I don't think we can, I just pray that you'd be able to remind us of Gideon, remind us of what you do, and how you molded him into a man, truly a man of valor, how you molded him to a man that truly trusted you. But it was quite a journey to do so. And when we oftentimes will face the exact same scenario in our own lives, when we wonder why things seem to be going from bad to even worse, that we be reminded that there are times when we have to learn to trust you so that we can move forward for you. And I thank you for what you will do in those instances, in those cases, to your honor, to your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Sunday, meal, hamburgers on the grill.